This is the talk of Music City Real Estate.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the talk of Music City Real Estate.
Where we educate and motivate all things real estate.
Monty Mohr here, Realty One Group Music City's owner and broker.
Hey, and Carey Ann with CMG Financial and My Mortgage Team. And welcome back. It's Sunday evening.
Welcome back, Carey Ann. You know, this show is driven by all those questions that we keep receiving, and I'm so grateful for. And so everybody, please send all real estate or mortgage-related questions to questions@talkmusiccity.com. That's questions@talkmusiccity.com or hashtag TalkMusicCity.
Yes, and this also is a podcast, so please subscribe. You can call up any of these shows anytime and listen to them at your leisure. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Music Podcasts, plus many other podcast platforms. And you can also watch the show on our YouTube channel and Facebook page. Simply search The Talk of Music City.
I have to admit, I really enjoy having the freedom to watch our show on the Facebook, The Talk of Music City Real Estate. I really, truly do. It's not just so I can look at myself, I don't think.
For our expressions. I realize that I talk with my hands a lot.
Yeah. I know it.
Very passionate. I love that.
We are passionate about it. We love helping people. You know, I understand that you just sold your home. You put somebody else's shoes on, so you just kind of beef up your empathy gland.
Oh, you never... I just don't know. There is a lot of emotion that goes into purchasing or selling a home. You know, and we try to take, being the professionals that we are, we try to take a lot of the burden and frustration off of the client. But when you are the client and you go through things and you work so hard yourself to do an amazing job, and you see other people that are professions in our industry may not be as passionate, it is sometimes frustrating. Yes, so I was supposed to close on one of my investment homes.
Yesterday? Today?
Well, today's Sunday, so the other day.
Yeah.
But last week, actually.
Every day is a work day for me.
I know. You're right. It's a working day. But so last week, or the beginning part of this last week, and so everything was fine. I had a 30-day contract. I even, knowing me, asked the lender to send not only a pre-approval letter, because we've talked in these shows where there's pre-qualification letters and there's pre-approval letters. Well, you and I both know sometimes there could be a loophole. So I went the extra mile and wrote in there that I would want to see an underwriting approval and commitment letter.
Be pretty solid.
5 days from the time we binded the contract. And I also wanted the appraisal ordered 3 days after we binded the contract. So here comes 5 days later, and here's the true approval, letter.
So the
actual underwriting.
The underwriter signed off on it.
Right. And so I noticed that the conditions on the approval that was very familiar to me was whited out. Like they didn't want to share with me their conditions. And I completely understand that from a privacy standpoint. So we went back to the lender and asked specifically, are there any concerns on this approval? And we were told, no, simple, easy breezy. That's what we were told. Literally, I think that's even what's typed in an email back from the lender. And so we moved forward, and the appraisal came in. Everything moved along nicely. And I'm running around trying to figure out how to get after the inspection, there was 3 things on that particular house, right? 3 things wrong. A electric cap needed to be added, or a plug-in cap, and a fire. What are they called?
Smoke detector.
Smoke detector, yeah. Needed to be added. One was off, and some insulation fell down. Like literally.
The whole inspection, that's all there was?
That's all was on the inspection.
Holy cow,
because nice. This was one of those houses that we took to the studs and rebuilt it. So it was a beautiful, beautiful home. Very minor things. Again, so much stress to find, try to do those 3 minor things, which was so simple, and then got all the furniture moved out, right? So all this happened. Everything's moving and grooving because I want to make sure I'm following the responsibilities that I'm supposed to do as the seller.
You were trusting.
And I was thinking, we're moving along. Great. We're going to get that off the books. No worries. And here comes last Monday afternoon, and I get a call saying that furniture's moved out, everything's moving, and literally 30 minutes later get a call from the other agent saying that there's a delay, that they're going to miss the closing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because I don't miss closings. Oh, and the other agent said, well, you should be understanding, Carey Ann, because you're in the industry. And I was like, no, I'm so sorry. I'm not understanding because I guarantee all of my closing dates, and I'm never delinquent, on those. So they wanted 2 days, and then it led to Friday. This is just, this past Friday, they were going to close again. And then all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, a different terms happens. 30 minutes later from there, we're just going to terminate because we got declined. So they send a decline letter out randomly from a different bank. And so I guess what happened was rumor had it that there was a intro rate at a bank to do an equity line. And they really liked that intro rate. And so they changed gears midway, didn't communicate to us that they wanted to change gears. And that second lender was not able to give them the full amount that they wanted. And so I now see a denial letter. So that is an interesting thing because there's a lot of emotions, right? Now I have a double mortgage payment that I wasn't expecting. I now don't have a home that was staged where it was staged before.
That's so frustrating.
And, a lot of money and time goes into that. So we understand that we all go through this. It doesn't matter where you are and how successful you are. At the end of the day, these situations and scenarios occur to all of us, right? And so now that home is back on the market. But, you've got a client who says, I would like to have my earnest money back. I got declined.
Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Wouldn't.
Yeah, we'll talk about that with other people.
You bring up a really, really sensitive or a pet peeve of mine, Carey Ann. It's customary in Tennessee to turn the keys over as a seller to the new buyer the day of closing, and actually the time of closing. And I think that's so wrong.
Yeah.
Because, and I get it, I can argue both sides, I guess, but the greater amount of stress and pressure and vulnerability is on the seller side. You've moved all the furniture out. Let's say, for instance, that wasn't an investment home, but you actually lived there. Okay? Let's say that you had everything in your moving truck and you were out at the, ready to close that day because you had a closing scheduled and the closing died. I think it's wrong that, that our sales contract, I'm sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but I think it's really, really a good idea, let me put it that way, that when you're selling your home, that you try to do everything you can to have at least 24 hours to vacate the property. Because things can happen. If everybody handled their closings on time, like Carey Ann Sear at CMG Mortgage, we wouldn't have a concern about that, And honestly, I was just thinking when you were talking about that, of all the years and all the transactions we've done together, I don't think you've ever been late on one.
No. I mean, but you have to back into it and you have to have a plan A and a plan B. In this situation, sometimes clients take you down rabbit holes, right? I mean, I don't know if the initial plan of attack was to have a first and second mortgage on this. There was just going to be one mortgage and then the client wanted to go. But I, as the seller, that's not my problem. Like you were approved. And this is the other thing. I'm understanding to a point. If you really lost your job, if something really happened to you and you really got declined, then that's one thing. But you gave me an underwriting approval. You were truly approved for your contract. And what's frustrating to me is this is a legal binding document, as in you are giving good faith that you are in it to win it 100%. And yes, something may happen, but you just don't lie. Like you just don't come up with, and keep in mind, on Monday, I got an approval from the second lender. Right. I got an approval and then that was Monday. And then Wednesday I get a decline letter. Yeah. So, let's just be truthful. Let's really, not try to say things just because you want $1 here or there, do it the right way. And so, from other lenders, I take my profession so seriously. I stay up at night sometimes because I gave my word that we would close in a certain time and I'm going to make sure that happens. Right. So sometimes if a client takes me down a rabbit hole and wants to go a different direction and work with the second lender that I've never used, I need a backup plan. What if that does not occur correctly? Right. I need a plan B or sometimes even a plan C. And so that's initially the first of the week. I was so frustrated about that and wanted to get on my social media, sandbox there and start talking. But I was like, I'm going to use it as really good material moving forward and try to teach other people because how do you trust what somebody sends you? Why even send a piece of paper and a pre-approval letter if it's really not even that?
Well, that's part of the challenge, I think, of our industry is where we actually, you can talk about it being a legal document, but it's undergirded by this thing called trust.
Sure.
Because there are ways of weaseling out of those agreements.
Right. But we went the extra mile to even put it in the stipulations that I truly need a commitment by 4 days, and we got that. So we're protected from that standpoint. But
there was still trust that wasn't honored.
No, and if you want out of the house because for some reason another property came in that was shinier down the street,
Be honest.
Be honest. You if I chose to do that, I gave money to the seller. They invested time and energy to move furniture, to do repair work, and keep in mind mine was minor, but I mean, it was still energy on an investment that I didn't have time to go do. And just be honest, understand that if I don't want this house, please keep my earnest money, move on. Don't come up with crazy approval denials that are not even, legit or whatever. But hey, it happens to all of us. I always say that sometimes.
Well, I think the empathy gland, I think, I've said for years that I think every realtor ought to move every couple of years.
Sure, yeah.
Because we become kind of not hardened, but kind of indifferent to some of those challenges and those fears. But if you go through the moving process often enough, or keep it fresh in your mind, what that personal level is, it does keep you far more empathetic. And look how much more empathetic you're going to be now in that process.
Yeah, and or even trusting less on the next person. I feel bad for the next person who writes a contract on my house. We're going to need to close in 10 days, and I'll need the true underwriting approval within a day, type of thing. But we learn a lot, and it makes me want to be better. Even though I'm really good at what I do, it just makes me want to be even better because we can change the way that people understand our industry. Take my job and your job seriously. We are professionals
it's within. Our lives. This is our lives. And
this piece of paper, you just can't decide today I'm in, tomorrow I'm out. I mean, it's a signed document, that we all need
lives involved.
Need to follow for sure. But hey, so I just got a talk in there, got passionate about what I had to say first segment here.
It's real life.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the talk of Music City Real Estate.
Where we educate and motivate all things real estate.
Monty Mohr here with Realty One Group Music City.
Hey, and Carey Ann with CMG Financial and my mortgage team.
Carey Ann, thank you for sharing about your experience as a homeowner with a deal crashing a day or two before on something that should have been solid. And it is, for those of us that have been in business a long time in the real estate world, it is a sensitive issue when we're building a relationship on this super high level of trust that sometimes is merited and sometimes is not. And when somebody does what they did in your situation, it's unmerited for sure, and that's very frustrating. It causes us in the industry to be gun shy, when we're dealing with this every day. But
it makes you slow down to when you talk about a extension. Sometimes that's okay, but what if they made me extend for 2 more weeks and then come up with this situation?
And I do see that at times. And that's why.
And that makes it harder even more for sure. So, hey, we got some great questions. Do we have a special guest in the house?
We do have a special guest, and I asked Jim to share with us for a few minutes, Mr. Jim McCarthy, because one of the questions that we've been hearing is the concern that some homeowners are expressing because of the number of rental companies that are coming in, purchasing properties, and is that going to affect property values? I actually had an editor from one of the New York newspapers call me not too long ago and asked me, what my thoughts were with so many of these investment groups buying up properties and renting them. And I shared with him without hesitation what my conviction was. But we're blessed today to have Mr. Jim McCarthy because he lives in a home is it Spring Hill, Jim?
Yes, it is.
Spring Hill, Tennessee, and it's a great neighborhood. I've been to Jim's home many times, and it's a very popular neighborhood. But so what's going on there, Jim? That's on this topic.
Well, I also have the privilege of sitting as the vice president on the board of the HOA.
Oh, okay.
And it was mostly, I was actually voluntold to be on. It wasn't exactly my idea, but I did it anyway. And one of the things that we're tackling is getting the community engaged in addressing some of these CCRs that we have to adjust them to accommodate for what's been happening. We've probably got a good, I'd say 10 to 15% of our community is rentals by investment companies from New York and
what percentage?
About 15%, we'd say.
Wow.
That seemed like a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the big issue for a lot of homeowners, and they're starting to take notice, is the fact that when you have rental companies that are coming in and buying up the neighborhood,
right?
They're not vetting people very well.
the homes are not being taken care of, the
Sure,
upkeep's not
quality,
there. Right. So that all goes down the tubes. So we've been taking a lot more action and getting the community engaged with trying to change some of the rules of our actual community. But we're finding out it's widespread, as you guys are probably
this isn't
finding as well.
isolated to your neighborhood.
Right.
You know, Spring Hill is, I think that the Wall Street Journal actually had an article about Spring Hill.
Wow.
About how Wall Street companies are actually buying up a lot of properties around
It was
town.
it was a Wall Street Journal editor or writer rather that had come here from New York just to drive up and down the streets of those neighborhoods that are so highly owned by those investment groups.
So I mean,
Interesting.
when you have individual owners that are renting out the properties, you got a guy that's probably living in Franklin that's got the property in Spring Hill. He's got skin in the game. He's here, you know, he's going to get the letters from the HOA saying, hey, cut your hedges, cut your lawn.
He cares about what that property looks like. He cares about what the
Take the
neighborhood
10
looks
bikes off the front porch.
Yeah.
Right.
or take the trailer out from the side.
Right.
You know. So I got a call from a gentleman who is the owner of one of the bigger property management companies for HOAs here in Tennessee. I don't know if I want to mention the name, but it's a big one.
Sure.
And out of the blue, I get a phone call from him. He wanted me to get involved.
because you're a position on the board.
I guess so. I mean, you know, I'm pretty sure he got my name or got recommended from somebody within the company to give me a call.
Yeah, probably also had heard you're passionate about the topic.
Yeah, it's aggravating.
Well,
it's really, as a homeowner.
You know, your equity is being affected right
Completely.
So you're not wanting more investors. You want that to be revised.
I don't mind people renting homes as long as they
Right.
understand there's skin in the game here. You know, in my particular situation, I had the house next to us is a rental home by one of these big conglomerate corporations.
Sure. Okay.
And when you have the renter coming home, their primary source of income is derived from, let's say, repossession of vehicles.
Okay.
And he thought that it was okay to park tow trucks and flatbeds and whatever
Sure.
kills he had that previous evening and leave them in front of his house or on the driveway. He thought that was okay. No, it's not okay.
No.
And we kind of got the HOA on them and they pushed back. But anyway, there's actually a bill, as a state bill 1429, House Bill 1290. It's basically a solar panel bill. Interesting. With an amendment in it that they snuck in, Amendment 7237, which, according to the CAI, which is Community Association, I'm trying to figure out here, Community Associate One Institute. So they're advocates for all the different communities and HOAs around the state and the country, I believe.
Wow.
They put out a summary talking about this particular bill, talking about how it takes away property rights from Tennessee property owners in favor of large New York and California corporations, which are rapidly buying up homes in Tennessee. And it seems to be happening a lot here. I don't know if it's happening anywhere else in the country. Provides new rights for out-of-state real estate investment companies. Limits the ability of neighborhoods to decide if or how many homes to rent in their neighborhood. So
They kind of give you that nice ratio or
and
balance.
they're sneaking it in under the guise of another bill. Restricts the ability of neighborhoods to protect the value of their property. Will reduce the inventory of homes available for purchase, particularly for entry-level buyers. Forces home buyers to compete against 100% cash offers when purchasing a new home. Limits the financing options for home buyers because lenders consider the number of rentals in the neighborhood when deciding whether to approve a home purchase loan. Is that something that
Can we pause for a minute on that? Carey Ann, can you speak to that topic?
Well, I know when we're looking at
Condos,
I'm not so sure that they are reviewing that 100% from a PUD or plan unit development. I don't see a questionnaire completed anymore in regard to that. But my question, I guess, is certain HOAs, aren't they managed by the people? Right.
There's typically a board involved.
Right.
And we're basically...
As in the homeowners, managed by the homeowners. So like when I lived in a community that was on the southern side of Franklin and lived there, and I had to, kind of going back to one of our other episodes, but I had to rent that property out because I had to move to Thompson Station on a bad purchase, a bad investment, and it was easier to rent that property out. And all of a sudden, the market was shifting, and so many more people were renting out those homes in Franklin. And it was a starter type of home, in the mid 2 range. At the time when we bought it, it was the high 190s, right? So the values of Franklin grew. But it got to a place where everybody had a rental, right? And so the HOA got together and put a stop to that and grandfathered people in that live there. They could have rentals, but anybody moving, any purchases from that point on, they would not be able to rent those out anymore or become that. So that actually was put in place. And I sold that house, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. So I wonder, that was a community agreement, within, and we did have a larger organization that helped manage it from a higher standpoint. But again, I would assume that the people made that decision, and or I like the percentage, but again, how is the percentage? Like today I want to buy that as an investment, but I can't because I have to be at 25%. So now I've got to wait and I'm on a waiting list. Like, how would you manage that? I wonder.
Yeah. And that's just so we're clear, we're not talking about folks shouldn't own investment properties. It's it's these large conglomerates that there's no personality, there's no caring about what's going on.
Or force the CCRs to the renter, right? They need to follow the lead. I mean, I got in trouble because I did have 10 bikes on the front porch, and they were like, Carey Ann, did you, that the Clampets living in your house? What's happening here? And so I had to, manage that, and or the lawn, the boys had the bikes and were dirt biking in the 10 by 10 front yard. You know what I'm saying? So there was and that was not going to work either. So I did get the multiple, calls. But it is hard if somebody doesn't care about the property, have ownership in the property as much as, you and I do, for sure. This is a good topic.
It is. We
need to continue this topic.
Do you mind if we continue on?
Yeah.
I do not mind at all.
Well, let's do that. Hey, you've been listening to the Talk of Music City Real Estate. We're going to be right back.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the talk of Music City Real Estate.
Where we educate and motivate all things real estate.
Monty Mohr here with Realty One Group Music City.
Hey, and Carey Ann with CMG Financial and My Mortgage Team.
We do want to quickly remind everyone to please send your questions to talkmusiccity.com. That's questions at talkmusiccity.com or hashtag talkmusiccity.
Yes.
It's a great topic here, talking about with our guest speaker, Mr. Jim McCarthy. Jim, I share your conviction from not in the midst of it, but I get it. When I had the Wall Street Journal writer call me up because I had a listing there not far from where you live, he said, "What's your opinion of these investment groups buying all these properties?" And I said, "I think it's a terrible thing." Mm-hmm. And I own rental properties, but I think these large groups buying like this is a terrible thing on a couple of counts. So one of them is that we know about that they don't have local skin in the game. They don't have really a caring heart about what's going on with their property or the neighborhood, because it's all about numbers. It's all about just what's in their portfolio. There's not a person there but my bigger concern is what happens when these entities get done with these properties. Let's say, for instance, it played out. They've gotten their, they've deducted all they can from it, and they decide to, let's say, dump those properties. Because someday that's going to happen, possibly. I mean, they could do it systematically where they're only going to do, 3 at a time or 5 at a time. But in some of these neighborhoods, they own a lot of homes, and they could cause the entire market in that price point, in that neighborhood, to be affected.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to those condos, right, that's where you're going to have the issue. You're going to not be able to, if one entity owns more than 50%, you're going to have the issue, right, that they're not warrantable. You can't get FHA approval and things like that when it comes to that condo piece. Mm-hmm. So we're talking single-family homes, right? Is that what we're talking about? Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some neighborhoods that are really promoted to be great rentals, right? Great, maybe daily. I don't know if they call them daily or evening rentals. I don't know how that works. But a bunch of investors go into that whole community. You're not going to have one primary and then a bunch of investors, right? There's a thought process there. Right. But in these everyday neighborhoods that Jim and I and you live in, where it is our primary home, and then all of a sudden you look across the street, there's a rental. You look diagonal, there's a rental. And nobody is caring. It just makes you kind of feel like you're being pushed out of your own, neighborhood and the hard money that you've invested, to stand up to those, condo or those HOA requirements. So that's frustrating for sure.
It is very frustrating because that was our experience. Was we're seeing this, more and more rental signs in not just our neighborhood but other neighborhoods around Spring Hill, right. Thompson Station, Middle Tennessee in general. And we just, what do you do? We've got an HOA here for a reason. Mm-hmm. No matter what people think of HOAs, this is the reason why HOAs exist.
It's important reason. Very important reason.
I've always said when you have people that are living that close in proximity to each other, mm-hmm. Without an HOA, it's anyone's best guess. And those neighborhoods are out there. You can drive through them, and that's why the houses are significantly less than ones with an HOA. But I got on the board, I guess, in a timely fashion, begrudgingly. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm on the board, we're starting to, use some of the talents that we have of the board members to bring the community together like it should. Mm-hmm. We've got a dive-in movie coming up on the 1st of June with the pool opening and things of that nature. And that'll encourage a lot more communication amongst the community, because right now the biggest challenge is changing the way we vote to change the CCRs. It takes a 75% quorum, and we've been trying to do it for years.
Oh, really?
Oh, my gosh.
75%
of what?
Not going to respond. They're not going to respond.
Unless you go door to door and get them all to vote.
Right. And sometimes that may be how the other neighborhood got that,
Perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're researching it. Our HOA management company has been very... the gentleman who called me is actually owns the company that manages our neighborhood. So they have been very useful and fruitful for us to be advocates and resources to help us put that message out and get the homeowners engaged in this conversation, because everybody's seeing it. They just don't know how to go about it. So I guess we're the kind of team coming together to try and lead them to the mountaintop, mm-hmm. to the promised land, so to speak. So in this particular situation, we're just trying to accommodate that. Then we're going to make it a 50+1 majority in order to change CCRs, because the CCRs were written, I think, back in 1999, 2000 by the builder.
Sure, right.
And
builder knew he was going to be long gone. So
right.
It was really
and it's every yard's got to have 2 trees in it. It's like, come on. There are people that took their trees down because they died, and mm-hmm. Because of the CCRs, they're being fined, and they didn't get clearance and all. I get it. This is going to create more engagement to get people more engaged in the conversation of the happenings in the neighborhood. Okay, you're going to have more skin in the game, mm-hmm. and more at risk if you don't voice your opinion at the meetings and things of that nature. But the next step is to actually say, we're going to put an amendment in that restricts rentals. You can rent the house, but only after 2 years. So you have to live in the property for 2 years, then you can rent the house.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So mm-hmm. I thought it was a very interesting strategy as well. So,
because usually that means it is their primary home that they've
mm-hmm.
set it up.
Right. If something happens that you need to rent it, you should be able to have that ability to do your property.
Sure.
And I know McKay's Mill has got something like that in part of their...
And understand, I'm not against people who rent their properties out by any stretch of the imagination. But it's like what you're talking about, faceless companies that have people down here at the local level that really don't care.
No, they don't care.
I was in a neighborhood that had a mixed use, right? So single families, townhomes, condos, and then there was not a gate, but right in front, there's apartments. And so you still struggle with the same, and not to say that a renter versus a homeowner is going to have any, difference, but now you've got them driving through the neighborhood, and not to say them as that they're different people, but, renters driving through the neighborhood thinking that maybe they can use the pool and hope mm-hmm. that it's, somebody they can open it up and just start to use the amenities that we pay for on a regular basis. So that was a big controversy of a conversation too back in the day, mm-hmm. Just even a few years ago, when that happened, and that made me as a homeowner decide that was not the place for me. I did not want to be there.
Right.
So you're right. You make decisions based upon what you thought, and now what's happening. It definitely it can change for sure. The
other notion that I've been hearing about, I'm not sure of the validity of it. It's a little bit more rumor based, but a lot of the companies that are buying up properties here are actually getting HUD assistance. So when that starts coming into it, they start making them HUD neighborhoods. And I'm not sure exactly how that breaks out, but I've been hearing, because of stressed areas, things that have been impacted by weather or something like that, where HUD has come in because of the houses that maybe some of these companies own in those areas. I believe this is how it works. I might be speaking out of turn, but from what I understand, because they've accepted or engaged in that process, they now, because they own so many houses in a certain area, can consider that area, like our neighborhood, a HUD neighborhood. Which is,
because so many people foreclosed on HUD's homes there?
I'm not sure what the detailed, the nitty gritty is, but that's just another thing I've heard. So, I mean, it's just very interesting and very troubling at the same time, because like you're saying, what's to stop them from selling these houses for pennies on the dollar?
Yeah, over the years, one thing I've always tried to give favor to, excuse me, are because it makes it so hard for the first-time buyer especially, or for any home buyer, to compete with a cash offer. It's so hard. And I've always tried to give the homeowner, when I know that let's say there's 3 offers on the table on a property, and 2 of those are investors, and one of them is the homeowner, I'm going to encourage the seller that I'm representing to give favor to the homeowner, even if the offer is not quite as strong, just because I really feel like we all need to take ownership of the end result of that, where things are going, if there's a compounding effect of that. Again, no offense to anybody that's buying property. I've owned as many as 10 at one time, but I'll tell you what, I was there and I paid attention and I make sure those things, there was no yard, cars in the yard and some of the challenges that you see probably.
Well, I think you're right. I think it comes down to just everybody taking ownership and understand that everybody should just take care of their particular property. And if we all did that, and if I wanted to have my mom live there, she's expected to do that, or have a renter in there, they're expected to follow through in suit, right? You would think.
Good information, Jim. Thank you for sharing.
No, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Good question.
So,
good topic.
We have a bunch of questions here today,
yes,
Carey Ann.
We do. We do. So a great question that I see here, somebody was asking, and it kind of goes back with what you referenced just a little bit ago about, the market. If I'm buying in the highest, or what seems to be the highest time of the market, and seems like the bubble has to burst at some point, should I be nervous about a particular time of selling, or not having a place to, and not having a place to buy? So, what is your thoughts about the market and, the bubble bursting and, seller's market versus buyer's market? What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, first of all, I don't think we'll ever see what we saw. Hopefully, we'll never see what we
Where's
saw
the wood?
in 2008.
Here's some wood.
Yeah, where's some wood? I really don't think that's going to happen.
No.
But there is certainly, I've seen some adjustments happening at certain price points because it's all price point driven. So, there's enough inertia, I believe, coming to Nashville and continues to come to Nashville that I don't see a big change in that. So I don't think there's going to be a bubble, personally. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I just think hanging on to real estate, for the long haul, it's not a quick, unless you're flipping something, it's not going to be a quick fix. So, staying there and, I've always sold at the wrong time because I freaked out and thought, and then if I only held on 3 or 4 more months, I would have been
fine.
The homes
that I used to.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, I think buying real estate is a good thing. Hanging on to real estate is a good thing if you can. And talking to professionals and getting guidance on when it is the right time and not the right time to sell or purchase. But I always think it's the right time to purchase today. So. Well,
and I really do believe it is, and it certainly you have to pay attention to how many homes or what particular style or price point or area that are on the market at any one time. But to not go into some of these areas, I think probably is a good idea. But overall, I don't think we'll see a bubble again. Nashville's the place to be. I don't know if you heard that or not.
It is. It's the hottest city around. I love it. We're blessed to be here for sure. Hey, so thank you so much for listening to the Talk of Music City Real Estate. We're going to be right back. Take a short break. We've got some questions about appraisals and VA loans.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the Talk of Music City Real Estate,
where we educate and motivate all things real estate.
Monty Mohr here with Realty One Group Music City.
Hey, and Carey Ann with CMG Financial and My Mortgage Group.
I really appreciate these topics, Carey Ann. We've got another question here. I'm going to be a first-time buyer, and a friend of mine told me that I should either get pre-qualified or pre-approved. Can you tell me what the difference is? That's so important. You've talked about it before, but let's share that again if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So making sure you understand the term pre-approved versus pre-qualified. So pre-qualified is when you just call the lender or you apply online and poof, you're approved, right? You say your credit score is blank, you make so much money a month and your debts are what they are. And the lender looks at that and says, yes, you are pre-qualified for the price point of such and such.
So a pre-qualification letter is nothing more than a phone call and the information that you're gathering from that person, and hopefully it's accurate.
Right.
But I've heard, over the years I've been doing this, somebody say I've got a really great credit score and find out that it was in the 500s, or sometimes people didn't realize something had happened. Like, when I bought a house two houses ago, and you had to inform me, well, look, wait a minute, you were late on that investment property because you were closing on it, and I suddenly, my credit wasn't what I thought it was, but. So,
right. And we do run into that a lot. I mean, just this past week, we've been talking with a lot of families who think they have a lot of, income, and they do, but it's not on paper. And remember, the lenders work off of taxable income. And so they're going to look to see what you've paid taxes on. And so that is something that's, really important. And like you said, credit score, what you think, we struggle with this a lot. You go on your freecreditreport.com company or the Credit Karmas of the world, et cetera, or even go directly to the TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian sites, and you see what your score is. And then the lender then pulls a mortgage tri-merge credit report, and that score is a lot lower. And I had a gentleman just this past week who was just furious. He had a bank credit report, and keep in mind the bank, or when you go get a car loan, right? That bank that's pulling your report, it may just be pulling an Equifax number, right? But again, they're pulling a totally different report than what the lender is. And so this was off about 40 points, right? And so the thought was it was because I pulled it and it was me, not so much they didn't understand that, each report has different formulas and algorithms that they use, right? So that could cause a difference there. So making sure you go the extra step to get pre-approved. And what does that mean? You want to take a full application. You want the lender to ask you all the right questions. You want to provide your pay stubs, your income documentation, and go through all of that, and then have a true underwriter. That would be a pre-approval where the lender specifically reviews everything. Now, my background is in underwriting, so I can review it and know that the underwriter is going to be fine with that. Sometimes I want to go the extra step on some if I have a question or two and send it to a true underwriter, because at the end of the day, it's whatever they say is going to be the final decision, right? And so you've got a pre-qual, a pre-approval, and a true approval, right? So we're always aiming for the true approval. If you were to show up to a listing and want to put an offer in with a true approval letter, you're probably going to be put on the top of the stack versus
so that's how you're able. That's how you're able to honor your word when you say this will close. Is they've got a real approval letter in their hand,
right? We've reviewed income docs. Exactly. We've reviewed and gone the extra mile to look. But keep in mind, I mean, I will tell you, just this past couple weeks, I mean, there's been 10 loans that have crossed my desk that have been denied by other lenders, right? And so why are they denied down the street and I can maybe help them? Well, a couple things that I've noticed is overlays. Some banks have some overlays where a mortgage company may not. We're a direct lender, so we follow the agency's guidelines, where some other folks may have been put on a program that they shouldn't have been put on, right? And I always talk about this one scenario. One client got denied because they didn't have 2 jobs for 2 years, right? And so they automatically got denied. Well, I qualified them with only 1 job. I took one of the jobs off, right? And was allowed to get them approved with extended ratios. But my company allowed, because the agencies allowed for extended ratios for the veteran, maybe that other company did not. So never take no as the first no as your final answer. I always say, call and talk to your agent and have them refer you over to another professional that's been doing it for a really long time, who has a resume of 10 plus years and knows how to do mortgages. Because the thought of you not buying a home because the financing fell through is just so sad.
I wonder how many folks out there that could be homeowners right now, but they ended up with the wrong information and didn't have somebody who had a lifeline to somebody who knows how to get to the finish line.
Sure.
And it's kind of sad.
Yeah, there was a lady who got denied. She wanted to use the 100% first-time homebuyer loan, which is a great loan out there. But it does require a 640 credit score, and she had a 638. And so she was told she couldn't get the loan.
You're
When
kidding.
it crossed my desk, it was still a 638, but I used our rapid rescore simulator, which shared with me results on how to boost her score up 5-10 points. It was very easy to do. We did it within a week, and now she's approved for a first-time homebuyer loan.
So if you don't mind, what did she have to do? Did pay something off, or how did that
Yeah,
work?
so some quick tips to boost your credit score is to pay down those revolving credit cards down under 30%. You'll notice
But don't
that's
pay
a
them
boost.
off.
Don't pay them off. Usually the first step is just to pay them down. And keep in mind, you might say, well, I did that, but sometimes the reports that we have are about 30 days delayed. So understand that you may have already paid something off, but the lender is looking like you're still maxed out on a credit report. And if you have paid it down, you just want to provide a statement for that credit card to the lender if they use rapid rescores internally, and they can help you boost that score. So yes, that is one thing that's really important. Sometimes you've paid everything off and there's nothing working on your credit. So I might say it's your lucky day. You get to go buy a shirt. Let's say you have a Walmart card, go get a shirt. Or if you have a gas card, go, charge a tank of gas, on that card, just because you want to stimulate,
Right.
that particular card to boost the score. So I had another situation
So
where
it's not a magic twang.
no, there's some things that you have to do, but
Right.
another gentleman's score was a 560. Actually, let me rephrase. I think it was even lower, 530. And on the report, if the lender is seasoned enough, they'll actually not just look at the score. I like to print it out and review it. I'm the old school girl that likes the paper. But some of these folks just see a number and they see the 520 or the 530 and say no. We go the extra step to review it. And if you read it correctly, it's going to tell you potential ability to boost the score. It should give you some point potential. And so this gentleman had 100 points potential. I said, interesting, right? So if I could get that score up over a 600, I could easily get them approved for FHA financing, which is 3.5% down. And so we just put them through the simulator to see what would happen. And really all that they had to do, was crazy, to get 100 points, remove them from 2 authorized user accounts. So they were on 2 accounts that maybe were a kid's or a parent's that they did not pay on time. So it said remove them and they would get the 100 points. And literally they got 100 points within a week and was able to get a financing. Where somebody else saw that low score and just automatically said, sorry, I can't help you, or it's going to take 6 months to boost your credit or something like that. So taking the time, I always say, and my team gets on me because they even used it this week on me, but slow down to speed up. So take a moment to really review what you're doing so you can speed up and help many more families, so that's what we're all about. But yes, so pre-qual versus pre-approved. If a lender says, great news, you're pre-qualified, I would slow them down a little bit, provide more documentation. Because if you can get that off your plate, the process of buying a home is just going to be so much more enjoyable, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And why be stressed out about the financing
let's
part?
get that out of the way.
Yeah. The thought and the call of getting that you were denied or a grief right at the last minute does not make the process go smooth for you.
So I've the continuation of this question says, I've also always heard it's better to go through a mortgage lender than a regular bank. What are your thoughts on that? Well, we're going to be a little biased probably on that topic because we believe in a mortgage company. My experience with banks, no offense to any out there, is that well, it's you said earlier, they're still having to walk across the hall to get to the mortgage department. So.
I mean, banks are great, and I think that when working with an established professional, it's with so much not the bank itself, but really the person that they've hired to help you with the process is really important, and somebody that you can trust is important. But if you go to a bank, again, the teller, the banker that helps you with my checking and savings still has to go across the hall, like you said, to go talk to the mortgage lender, who's still going to pull the same exact report that the mortgage firm is. Now, the difference with a mortgage firm and maybe a bank is that maybe they have different options. Maybe they don't have as many overlays. Maybe they truly follow agencies' guidelines and things like that. So you're not forced to work with one, right? I do think they allow your credit report to be locked for a period of time to give you that ability to shop mortgages. So it's really important that you take the time to find the right mortgage. You don't always have to get your mortgage where you get your checking account. So finding the right program and working with trusted professionals that can help and walk you through the process is key.
The assumption is because they already have my banking information, it'll be easier, but it's not an easy. They still have to start from scratch.
Yes. Hey, today was a great day. Jim, thank you so much for joining in. We appreciate all of the questions. We have so many more, so we'll have to bring those to next week. But thank you so much. You've been listening to the Talk of Music City Real Estate.